The biting wind carried snow through the streets of Benton, Arkansas. As Beatrice Simmons clutched her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, watching with tear-filled eyes as the last of her family's belongings were unceremoniously tossed into the muddy street. December 1878 had brought nothing but hardship since her husband's passing 3 months prior, and now, with Christmas merely 2 weeks away, she and her 4 daughters were homeless. "Please," Beatrice begged, her voice breaking as she approached the landlord. "My girls will freeze out here. Surely we can come to some arrangement until spring." Mr. Hawkins, a stout man with cold eyes that matched the winter sky, shook his head firmly. "3 months without rent, Mrs. Simmons. My patience and charity have run dry. I have a business to run, and your sob story won't pay my bills." 13-year-old Charlotte, the eldest of Beatrice's daughters, stood protectively beside her sisters. 10-year-old Emma, 7-year-old Sarah, and little Lily, barely 5. Their thin coats offered scant protection against the howling December wind, and Beatrice felt a stab of failure pierce her heart as she watched them shiver. "We'll find somewhere," Charlotte promised, her young face too serious for her years as she helped gather what little they could carry. Beatrice nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Her husband's sudden illness had depleted what meager savings they'd accumulated. Thomas had been a good man, hardworking and devoted to his family, but consumption had claimed him swiftly, leaving Beatrice with mounting debts and 4 hungry mouths to feed. She'd taken in laundry and mending, but the work barely put food on the table, let alone paid the rent. With trembling hands, Beatrice loaded their most precious belongings into a small cart borrowed from a sympathetic neighbor. Family quilts, Thomas's pocket watch, a few cooking implements, and the girls' meager collection of clothing and toys were all that remained of their life. "Where will we go, Mama?" little Lily asked, her wide eyes brimming with tears. Beatrice forced a smile. "We'll find a place, sweetling. God won't leave us in the cold." But as they trudged through the deepening snow, Beatrice's faith wavered. Benton was a small town, and news of their financial troubles had spread quickly. Those who might have offered shelter were facing their own hardships as the harsh winter strained resources. The sisters walked in a tight huddle, with Charlotte helping Beatrice pull the cart. The snow fell heavier now, and darkness approached much too quickly. "There's Mr. Morrison's place," Charlotte suggested after they had wandered for nearly an hour. Beatrice hesitated. Nathan Morrison's ranch lay on the outskirts of town, a substantial property that had flourished under his care over the past 5 years, since his arrival in Benton. He was known to be fair in his business dealings, but kept mostly to himself. Some called him standoffish, others suggested he carried secrets from his past. Whatever the truth, he was not someone Beatrice knew well enough to approach for charity. "He has that big house," Emma pointed out through chattering teeth, "and lots of space in his barn." As the wind intensified and Lily began to cry quietly from the cold, Beatrice realized they had little choice. The Morrison ranch was the closest shelter, and night was falling fast. "Just for tonight," Beatrice decided, adjusting their course toward the ranch that sat nestled against the foothills a mile outside of town. The journey seemed endless as they battled against the strengthening storm. By the time the outline of the ranch house came into view, all 5 were nearly frozen, their extremities numb and movements sluggish. A warm glow emanated from the windows of the large 2-story home, and smoke curled from the chimney, promising warmth that seemed like a distant dream to Beatrice and her girls. The barn stood nearby, its doors secured against the weather. "Perhaps we could just shelter in the barn," Beatrice suggested, her pride making her reluctant to beg at the front door. "Mama, it's too cold," Charlotte argued, her usual respect tempered by genuine concern. "The little ones need proper warmth." With a resigned nod, Beatrice led her daughters up the path to the front porch. Each step was an effort, their sodden shoes slipping in the fresh snow. Reaching the door, Beatrice hesitated, then knocked firmly. Long moments passed before footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal Nathan Morrison. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the western sun, he cut an imposing figure. His dark hair was peppered with gray at the temples, and his eyes a striking blue that reminded Beatrice of summer skies widened in surprise at the sight before him. "Mrs. Simmons?" he asked, taking in the bedraggled family on his doorstep. "Mr. Morrison," Beatrice began, her voice quavering from cold and humiliation. "I apologize for the intrusion, but we find ourselves without." The words stuck in her throat. Charlotte stepped forward. "We've been evicted, sir. We have nowhere to go, and the little ones are freezing. We thought perhaps your barn." Nathan's expression shifted, a flash of something unreadable crossing his features before his gaze settled on little Lily, whose lips had taken on a bluish tinge. Without another word, he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in," he said, his deep voice gentle but firm. As the exhausted family crossed the threshold into the blessed warmth of his home, Nathan Morrison looked at Beatrice with unexpected kindness in his eyes and added, "Welcome home." The words, so casually spoken yet laden with meaning, brought fresh tears to Beatrice's eyes as she ushered her daughters inside. Nathan Morrison's home was everything their cold, tired bodies craved: warm, spacious, and smelling of pine, and something delicious cooking on the stove. The main room featured a large stone fireplace where logs crackled cheerfully, casting dancing shadows on the polished wooden floors. "Get those wet things off," Nathan instructed, moving to stoke the fire. "I'll find some blankets." Beatrice helped her daughters remove their sodden coats and shoes while Nathan disappeared down a hallway, returning moments later with an armful of thick quilts. "These should help," he said, distributing them among the shivering family. "Now I've got stew simmering. Been cooking since noon." "More than enough for everyone." "Mr. Morrison, your kindness is overwhelming, but I can't accept," Beatrice began. "Mrs. Simmons," Nathan interrupted gently, "it's nearly 10 degrees below freezing out there, and those girls need warmth and food. Whatever else needs discussing can wait until morning." Something in his tone brooked no argument, and Beatrice found herself nodding gratefully. Within minutes, Nathan had set out bowls of rich beef stew and thick slices of fresh bread. The girls, their initial shyness forgotten in the face of hot food, ate eagerly. Beatrice watched her daughter's color return as they warmed up, and she felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. They were safe, at least for tonight. "Thank you," she said softly to Nathan when he refilled her bowl. "I don't know what we would have done." Nathan merely nodded, his expression guarded yet kind. "Finish your meal. I'll prepare some sleeping arrangements." While they ate, Nathan busied himself arranging blankets and pillows near the fireplace. "I have spare bedrooms," he explained, "but the fire will keep you warmest tonight. Tomorrow we can sort out something more proper." The suggestion of tomorrow and beyond wasn't lost on Beatrice. She wanted to ask what he meant, what he expected in return for his charity, but exhaustion weighed heavily on her, and the questions remained unasked. Once the meal was finished, and the dishes cleaned, Beatrice had insisted on helping despite Nathan's protests. The girls settled into their makeshift beds by the fire. Little Lily was already asleep before her head touched the pillow, her small hand clutching her favorite rag doll, rescued from their belongings. Beatrice sat beside her daughters, gently stroking Sarah's hair as the child drifted to sleep. Nathan watched from his armchair across the room, a book open but unread in his lap. "They're good girls," Beatrice said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "They've been so brave through everything." Nathan's gaze softened as he looked at the sleeping children. "They take after their mother, I imagine." Beatrice felt a flush warm her cheeks. "I'm not sure how brave I've been. A truly brave woman wouldn't have ended up homeless with 4 children in the dead of winter." "Brave doesn't mean you don't face hardship," Nathan replied, closing his book. "It means you keep going despite it." After a pause, he added, "I heard about your husband. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Beatrice whispered. Thomas's absence still felt like an open wound. "He was a good man, I've no doubt." Another silence fell between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Beatrice felt oddly at ease in this stranger's home, as if some invisible thread of understanding connected them. "You should rest," Nathan finally said, rising from his chair. "Morning comes early on a ranch." Beatrice nodded, suddenly aware of how bone-tired she truly was. "Mr. Morrison, about tomorrow, we'll talk in the morning," he assured her. "For now, just know that you and your daughters are welcome here for as long as you need." With that, he retreated to his own room, leaving Beatrice to wonder at the unexpected kindness of this solitary rancher, who had opened his door to 5 strangers on the coldest night of the year. As she settled beside her sleeping daughters, Beatrice offered a silent prayer of gratitude. Whatever tomorrow might bring, tonight they were warm, fed, and safe, and that was miracle enough. Morning arrived with gentler weather, the storm having passed during the night. Beatrice woke to the aroma of coffee and bacon, finding Nathan already dressed and cooking at the cast-iron stove. "Good morning," he greeted her quietly, mindful of the still sleeping girls. "Coffee, please." Beatrice accepted the steaming mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "You're up early. Ranch doesn't run itself," Nathan replied with a small smile. "Already fed the animals and checked the fences. Storm did some damage, but nothing that can't be fixed." Beatrice was struck by how different he seemed in the daylight, less imposing, perhaps, but no less solid and dependable. His movements were efficient as he turned bacon in the pan and mixed biscuit dough, suggesting a man accustomed to caring for himself. "Let me help," Beatrice offered, setting down her coffee. Nathan nodded, moving aside to give her space at the stove. They worked in companionable silence until Charlotte stirred, followed quickly by the other girls. Soon the quiet house was filled with the whispered conversations and muffled giggles of children. Breakfast was a lively affair, with the girls gradually overcoming their shyness. Nathan answered their curious questions about the ranch with patient good humor, describing his horses and cattle with such vivid detail that even little Lily was entranced. After the meal, as Beatrice and Charlotte cleared the dishes, Nathan cleared his throat. "Mrs. Simmons, might I have a word?" Beatrice's heart fluttered nervously. This was at the moment he would politely but firmly explain that while he'd been happy to offer emergency shelter, they would need to find other arrangements. "Girls, why don't you help your sister with the dishes?" she suggested, following Nathan to the far side of the room. "Mrs. Simmons," he began. "Beatrice," she interrupted. "Please," he nodded. "Beatrice, and I'm Nathan." He seemed to gather his thoughts before continuing. "I understand your situation is difficult and I want to make an offer." Beatrice braced herself, uncertain what kind of offer to expect. "My foreman quit last month, family matters calling him east," Nathan explained. "I've been managing alone, but with winter setting in and calving season approaching, I need help." Beatrice blinked in surprise. "I don't understand." "I need a housekeeper," Nathan said plainly. "Someone to cook meals, keep the place in order. The foreman's cabin sits empty. It's small but solid with 2 bedrooms. It would give you and your daughters a place to stay. Beatrice stared at him, processing his words. You're offering me employment. And housing. Yes. Nathan's expression remained serious. The work isn't easy and the pay won't make you rich, but it's honest work with a roof over your head, and your older girls could help around the ranch for extra earnings. Mr. Morrison, Nathan, Beatrice corrected herself. This is incredibly generous, but I don't want charity. It's not charity, Nathan replied firmly. I need the help and you need the work. It's a fair exchange. Beatrice glanced at her daughters, busy at the wash basin, their future suddenly less precarious than it had been mere hours ago. I don't know the first thing about ranch work. You know how to run a household, though, Nathan countered, and the rest you'll learn. Charlotte seems a capable girl who could help with the chickens and garden come spring, and even the younger ones can find ways to contribute. He paused. At least consider it. Beatrice didn't need to consider long. What alternative did she have? Return to town with no prospects, no home, and winter deepening by the day. I accept, she said firmly. And I promise you won't regret your offer. We'll earn our keep. Relief flickered across Nathan's face. Good, we'll move your things to the cabin today. The news was met with excitement from the girls, especially when Nathan mentioned that the cabin had a loft where the older girls could sleep, while Beatrice and the younger ones took the bedrooms. The foreman's cabin, situated 100 yards from the main house, proved better than Beatrice had dared hope. Though dusty from disuse, it was solid and well built, with a small kitchen, a cozy sitting area with its own fireplace, and the promised bedrooms. The furniture was simple but sturdy, and Nathan had already stocked the woodpile by the door. It needs a woman's touch, he admitted as they surveyed the space, but it's weather-tight and warm. It's perfect, Beatrice replied honestly. After fearing her children would freeze in the streets, this humble cabin seemed like a palace. The remainder of the day passed in a flurry of activity. Nathan helped bring in their belongings from the cart, built fires in both the main house and cabin fireplaces, and showed Beatrice the essential workings of the ranch. By evening, the cabin had been swept and aired, beds made with their own quilts supplemented by extras from Nathan's stores, and a simple supper prepared in their new kitchen. Nathan joined them for the meal at Beatrice's insistence. It's the least we can do to thank you, she explained. As they ate, Nathan outlined what would be expected. Beatrice would cook meals for the ranch hands when they returned in spring, keep the main house in order, and help with seasonal activities like preserving and gardening. In exchange, they would have the cabin, a monthly wage, and access to the ranch's produce. It's more than fair, Beatrice assured him when he seemed concerned about asking too much. We're grateful for the opportunity. After the meal, as Nathan prepared to return to the main house, little Lily unexpectedly ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. Thank you for our new home, she said with the straightforward sincerity only a child could manage. Nathan seemed momentarily frozen, then awkwardly patted her head. You're welcome, little one. The expression on his face, a mixture of surprise, discomfort, and something like longing, stirred Beatrice's curiosity. This man was a puzzle, gruff yet kind, solitary yet willing to open his home to strangers. What had brought him to this ranch alone? Why did a child's embrace seem to unsettle him so? As the weeks passed, Beatrice and her daughters settled into ranch life with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, and the security of having a roof over their heads and food on the table eased the grief that had shadowed them since Thomas's death. Nathan proved to be a fair employer, neither demanding nor intrusive. He spent most days working around the ranch, returning tired but content in the evenings for the meals Beatrice prepared. Gradually, his initial reserve began to thaw, especially around the girls. Charlotte, serious and responsible beyond her years, took to ranch life with enthusiasm, learning to collect eggs, feed chickens, and even help with the more docile horses. Emma showed an unexpected talent for cooking, often assisting Beatrice in the kitchen. While Sarah developed a passion for the vegetable garden Nathan had shown her, already planning spring plantings despite the winter snow. Lily, too young for many chores, nevertheless brightened everyone's days with her irrepressible spirit and ability to coax smiles from even the most stoic ranch hands who began returning as February approached. Christmas came and went, a simple but joyful affair. Nathan had surprised them all with small gifts, practical items like warm gloves and books, but treasured nonetheless. Beatrice had managed to knit him a scarf in secret, and the girls had made paper ornaments to decorate the small pine tree he had brought into the main house. By late January, a comfortable routine had developed. Beatrice would rise early to prepare breakfast, then spend her days maintaining the houses, cooking, mending, and teaching the girls their lessons. Nathan would join them for evening meals more often than not, sometimes lingering afterward to read by the fire or teach the girls card games. It was during these quiet evenings that Beatrice began to see beneath Nathan's reserved exterior. He was well-read and thoughtful, with a dry wit that emerged when he was relaxed. He spoke little of his past, but occasional comments suggested he had come west from Boston, leaving behind a life of some privilege. One particularly cold evening in early February, after the girls had gone to bed, Beatrice found Nathan still sitting by the fire in the main house, staring into the flames with a troubled expression. "Is everything all right?" she asked, pausing in her tidying of the kitchen. Nathan looked up, seemingly startled from deep thought. "Just remembering," he said after a moment. Beatrice hesitated, then sat in the chair opposite him. "Sometimes remembering is the hardest work there is." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're right about that." He gazed at her thoughtfully. "You never speak of your husband." The observation surprised her. "I suppose I don't. Not because I want to forget him, but because it hurts," Nathan finished for her. Beatrice nodded. "The girls keep his memory alive in their own ways. Charlotte has his sense of responsibility, Emma his love of stories, Sarah his gentle patience, and Lily." She smiled sadly. "Lily has his laugh. He must have been a remarkable man." "He was ordinary in many ways," Beatrice admitted. "A shopkeeper with dreams bigger than his means. But he loved us fiercely, and that made him extraordinary to us." After a pause, she gathered her courage. "And you, there must be a story that brought you to Benton." Nathan was quiet so long that Beatrice thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost as if he were talking to himself. "I had a family once, a wife, Elizabeth, and a son, James." His hands tightened on the arms of his chair. "Influenza took them both in '73. James was just 5. "Oh, Nathan," Beatrice breathed, understanding now his initial awkwardness around her children, especially Lily. "I'm so sorry. After they died, Boston held nothing for me but ghosts. My father wanted me to continue in the family banking business, but I couldn't bear the sympathy in everyone's eyes." He gestured around the room. "So I came west, bought this land, and built something new." A humorless smile crossed his face. "Traded one kind of isolation for another, I suppose." "It's a fine thing you've built here," Beatrice offered gently. Nathan met her gaze directly. "It was empty until you and the girls arrived." The simple honesty of his statement hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Beatrice felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire spreading through her chest. "I should check on the girls," she said softly, rising from her chair. Nathan nodded, also standing. "Beatrice," he said as she reached the door, "thank you for listening." "Thank you for sharing," she replied, and returned to the cabin with her thoughts in tumult. That conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. A new ease developed between them, a sense of shared understanding that hadn't existed before. Nathan began to share more meals at the cabin, sometimes bringing books to read aloud to the girls. He took an interest in their education, discovering that Charlotte had a natural aptitude for mathematics and Emma for literature. February gave way to March, bringing the first hints of spring to the Arkansas hills. The ranch grew busier as calving season began in earnest, with Nathan often working from before dawn until well after dusk. Beatrice found herself watching for his return each day, worrying when he was late, and feeling an unexpected flutter in her stomach when he appeared at the cabin door, tired but satisfied with the day's work. One evening in mid-March, Nathan arrived for supper with unusual excitement. "I have a surprise," he announced after greeting the girls. "The first foal of the season was born today, a little filly with 4 white socks." "Can we see her?" Charlotte asked eagerly, the other girls quickly adding their pleas. Nathan glanced at Beatrice. "With your mother's permission." "It's still light enough." Beatrice smiled at her daughter's excitement. "After supper, if Mr. Morrison isn't too tired." "Nathan," he corrected gently, not for the first time. "And I'm never too tired to show off a new foal." After the meal, they bundled up against the early spring chill and followed Nathan to the barn. Inside, the air was warm and sweet with the smell of hay. In a large stall at the far end, a chestnut mare stood protectively over a gangly foal with a white blaze down its face. "She's beautiful," Charlotte whispered, entranced. Nathan nodded proudly. "She'll make a fine horse someday." "What's her name?" asked Sarah, peering through the slats. Nathan looked thoughtful. "I haven't decided yet. Perhaps you girls could suggest something." This sparked an animated discussion among the sisters, with names ranging from practical to fanciful being debated in hushed voices, so as not to disturb the new mother and foal. "Starlight," Lily finally announced, "because she has a star on her face." Nathan considered the suggestion with appropriate seriousness. "Starlight," he repeated. "I think that suits her perfectly." Lily beamed with pride, and Beatrice felt a rush of affection for this man who treated her children's opinions with such respect. As they made their way back to the cabin, the girls running ahead, Nathan fell into step beside Beatrice. Their hands brushed accidentally, and Beatrice felt a jolt of awareness that both startled and thrilled her. "You've been good for this place," Nathan said quietly. "For me." Beatrice looked up at him, noting how the fading daylight softened his features. "You saved us when we had nowhere to turn. I'm not sure we can ever repay that kindness." "I don't want repayment," he replied, his voice dropping lower. "Having you and the girls here, it's brought life back to the ranch. Back to me." They had stopped walking, the cabin visible just ahead where the girls were already waiting on the porch. In the gathering twilight, with the first stars appearing overhead, Beatrice felt the world narrow to just this moment, just this man standing before her. "Nathan," she began, unsure what she wanted to say but feeling the need to say something. Before she could continue, a shout from the main house broke the moment. One of the ranch hands was calling for Nathan. Another cow was ready to calve. "I have to go," Nathan said, regret clear in his voice. "We'll talk tomorrow." Beatrice nodded, watching as he strode away, wondering what might have happened if they hadn't been interrupted. The next day brought unseasonable warmth, a false spring that melted the remaining snow patches and tempted early wildflowers to peek through the soil. Beatrice took advantage of the weather to air out bedding and begin spring cleaning in both houses. By mid-afternoon, with the girls occupied with their lessons in the cabin, Beatrice was sorting through a storage room in the main house when she discovered a small wooden chest tucked beneath a stack of blankets. Assuming it contained household items she should inventory, she opened it, only to find personal mementos. A woman's hairbrush with strands of auburn hair still caught in the bristles, a child's small shoe, letters tied with faded ribbon, and a daguerreotype of a beautiful young woman holding a solemn-faced little boy. Elizabeth and James, Nathan's lost family. Beatrice quickly closed the chest, feeling like an intruder. She was carefully returning it to its place when she heard Nathan's voice behind her. "I'd forgotten that was there." She turned, mortified. "I'm so sorry." "I was just organizing. I didn't mean to pry." Nathan's expression held no anger, only a sad resignation. "It's all right. Those memories. They're part of a life that sometimes feels like it belonged to someone else." "They were beautiful," Beatrice said softly. "Your wife and son." Nathan nodded, crossing the room to gently take the chest from her hands. He opened it, looking at the daguerreotype with an expression of such tender loss that Beatrice felt her heart constrict. "Elizabeth always said James had my stubborn chin," he remarked, a faint smile touching his lips. "She was right about that and most things. You loved them very much." "I did." Nathan carefully replaced the picture and closed the chest. "For a long time after they died, I thought that part of me was gone forever, the part that could love, could feel anything beyond grief and anger." He set the chest aside and looked directly at Beatrice. "I was wrong." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, its meaning unmistakable. Beatrice felt her breath catch, a mixture of hope and uncertainty flooding through her. "Nathan," she began. But once again they were interrupted, this time by Emma calling from outside that one of the chickens had escaped its pen. The moment dissolved and Nathan stepped back, his expression unreadable. "You should see to that," he said. "We'll talk later." But later proved elusive. A spring storm blew in that evening, bringing driving rain that turned the melting snow to treacherous mud. A section of fencing collapsed under the assault, allowing several cattle to wander dangerously close to a swollen creek. Nathan and his hands spent the next 2 days rounding up strays and repairing damage, returning to the house only for hasty meals and a few hours' sleep. Beatrice tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept returning to the storage room and Nathan's words. "I was wrong." What exactly had he meant? That he could love again. That he already did, and more confusing still were her own feelings. Thomas had been gone only 6 months. Was it disloyal to feel this quickening of her pulse whenever Nathan entered a room? This desire to know him better, to understand the quiet strength that defined him. By the 3rd day, the storm had passed, leaving a fresh, washed feeling to the air. Nathan appeared at the cabin door just after breakfast, looking tired but satisfied. "Fences are mended, cattle are where they should be," he reported. "I've given the hands the day off." "You should rest too," Beatrice suggested, noting the shadows under his eyes. Nathan nodded. "I will, but first I was wondering if you and the girls might like to ride out with me this afternoon. There's something I'd like to show you." The invitation intrigued Beatrice. "We'd like that." "Good. I'll have the wagon ready after lunch." The girls were ecstatic at the prospect of an adventure, and the morning passed quickly with preparations. After a simple lunch, they piled into the wagon, and Nathan guided the team along a winding trail that led deeper into the hills behind the ranch. "Where are we going?" Charlotte asked, voicing what they all wondered. "You'll see," Nathan replied with an enigmatic smile. After about 40 minutes, the trail opened into a small, sheltered valley, where a crystal-clear stream meandered through a meadow dotted with the first wildflowers of spring. Ancient oak trees provided dappled shade along the edges, and in the distance, blue mountains rose against the sky. "It's beautiful," Beatrice breathed as Nathan helped her down from the wagon. "This is my favorite place on the whole ranch," he admitted, looking almost shy. "I come here to think sometimes." The girls scattered immediately, drawn to the stream and flowers. Nathan spread a blanket on a patch of grass, and he and Beatrice sat watching the children explore. "I wanted to finish our conversation," Nathan said after a comfortable silence. "The one that keeps getting interrupted." Beatrice felt her heart rate quicken. "Yes." Nathan turned to face her directly. "When Elizabeth and James died, I thought I'd never have a family again, never want one. Coming west was my way of running from that loss." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "But then you and the girls appeared on my doorstep that night and something changed." "For us too," Beatrice said softly. "You've given us so much more than shelter." "Beatrice," Nathan's voice grew serious, "I know it's only been a few months and I know you're still grieving Thomas. I don't want to rush you or make you uncomfortable. But I need you to know that my feelings for you have grown beyond friendship or employer and employee." Beatrice felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Nathan," he held up a hand, "please, let me finish before we're interrupted again." A small smile touched his lips. "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just wanted you to know that if you're ready to consider a future that includes more between us, I'll be here." Tears pricked at Beatrice's eyes. "I've been so confused," she admitted. "Feeling guilty for having these emotions when Thomas hasn't been gone a year. He was a good husband, a good father. And I would never want to diminish his memory," Nathan assured her, "especially for the girls." "But," Beatrice continued, finding courage in his understanding, "Thomas would want us to be happy, to be secure. And being here with you has brought a peace I never expected to find again." She took a deep breath. "I care for you too, Nathan, more than I thought possible." The joy that spread across Nathan's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he reached for her hand. When their fingers intertwined, it felt like coming home. "We can take this as slowly as you need," he promised. From across the meadow, Lily's delighted laughter floated on the spring breeze as she chased a butterfly. Watching her, Nathan's expression softened further. "Your daughters are remarkable, Beatrice. I've grown to care for them as well." "They adore you," Beatrice replied truthfully. "Especially Lily. She asks every morning if Mr. Nathan will be joining us for supper." A comfortable silence fell between them, their hands still linked, as they watched the girls play in the meadow. No declarations of love had been made, no promises exchanged beyond the acknowledgement of growing feelings, yet Beatrice felt lighter than she had in months. Whatever grew between them would develop at its own pace, with respect for the past they each carried and hope for the future they might build. As spring bloomed fully across the ranch, so too did the connection between Beatrice and Nathan. Their courtship progressed gently, with small gestures and shared moments. Lingering conversations after the girls were asleep, walks around the property at sunset, a brush of hands while passing tools in the garden. Nathan began joining them regularly for evening meals, sometimes bringing small gifts for the girls' ribbons for their hair. A new book of fairy tales, carved wooden animals that he worked on during quiet evenings. He took time to know each child individually, discovering Charlotte's dream of someday teaching school, Emma's love of cooking, Sarah's natural affinity for animals, and Lily's endless curiosity about everything. By early May, with the ranch in full spring productivity, Nathan suggested a Sunday picnic by the stream that had become their special place. The day dawned bright and clear, perfect for an outing. The girls ran ahead on the now familiar trail while Beatrice and Nathan followed with the picnic basket. "I've been thinking," Nathan said as they walked, their hands occasionally brushing. "The cabin has served you well, but it's small for 5 people." "We manage comfortably enough," Beatrice replied, though she couldn't deny the quarters were tight, especially as the girls grew. Nathan looked uncharacteristically nervous. "What I mean to say is, well, the main house has plenty of room, 6 bedrooms in fact. More than enough for you, the girls, and me." Beatrice stopped walking, understanding dawning. "Nathan, are you asking? I'm asking if you'll marry me, Beatrice," he said plainly, turning to face her. "I love you. I think I have since that first night when you stood on my porch protecting your daughters with nothing but courage and determination." Joy bubbled up within Beatrice, but caution tempered it. "The girls are part of the package," Nathan finished for her. "A package I want with my whole heart." "I love them too, Beatrice. Each one of them with their unique spirits and talents." He took her hands in his. "I know I can never replace their father, and I would never try, but I hope they might someday consider me family." Tears sprang to Beatrice's eyes. "Oh, Nathan, they already do." Hope transformed his face. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," Beatrice breathed, her heart full to bursting. "Yes, I'll marry you." Nathan's kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that left Beatrice breathless. When they finally broke apart, she noticed the girls had doubled back and were watching from a respectful distance, their expressions ranging from Charlotte's knowing smile to Lily's wide-eyed curiosity. "Girls," Beatrice called, beckoning them closer. "Mr. Morrison, Nathan has asked me to marry him, and I've said yes. How would you feel about that?" There was a moment of silence, then Charlotte stepped forward. "Does this mean you'll be our new father?" she asked Nathan directly. Nathan knelt to meet her gaze. "I would be honored to be considered your father, Charlotte, but I know you had a wonderful father who can never be replaced. Perhaps we can find our own way forward together." Charlotte studied him solemnly, then nodded. "I think Papa would approve. He always said taking care of us was what mattered most to him." "And I promise to make that my priority as well," Nathan assured her. Emma was next. "Will we live in the big house?" "If you'd like to," Nathan confirmed. "Or we could build something new if you prefer." "The big house has the best kitchen," Emma declared practically. "I vote we stay there." Sarah approached more cautiously. "If you marry Mama, will the animals still be my friends too?" Nathan smiled gently. "Of course. In fact, I was thinking you might help me with the new foals this summer. You have a special way with them." Sarah's face lit up at this prospect, and she gave a decisive nod of approval. Finally, Lily pushed forward, regarding Nathan with serious consideration. "If you're going to be our new Papa, can I call you Papa instead of Mr. Nathan?" Nathan's voice was husky with emotion when he answered. "I would like that very much, Lily." Without further hesitation, Lily threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. One by one, the other girls joined until Nathan was surrounded by the Simmons women, his new family. Over their heads, his eyes met Beatrice's, shining with a happiness that mirrored her own. The wedding took place in late June, a simple but joyful ceremony on the ranch with the local minister officiating. The girls wore new dresses sewn by Beatrice, with flowers from the garden in their hair. Nathan stood tall and proud in his best suit, his eyes never leaving Beatrice as she walked toward him in a pale blue dress that complemented her eyes. The ranch hands and a few friends from town witnessed their vows, and afterward, there was feasting and dancing in the yard behind the main house, which was now truly a home for all of them. That evening, after the guests had departed and the girls were tucked into their new rooms, Nathan led Beatrice onto the porch. The summer night was warm and fragrant with honeysuckle, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. "Happy, Mrs. Morrison?" he asked, drawing her close. "Incredibly," she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. "I never imagined finding love again, building a new family." "Life has a way of surprising us," Nathan mused. "6 months ago, I was a lonely man in a too-big house. Now I have a beautiful wife and 4 daughters who fill every corner with life." "5 daughters," Beatrice corrected softly, placing his hand against her still flat stomach. "If my suspicions are correct." Nathan's eyes widened, joy and wonder transforming his face. "Truly." "It's early yet," Beatrice cautioned. "But yes, I believe so." Nathan gathered her in his arms, his kiss conveying all the emotions words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "When I opened my door that winter night and said welcome home, I had no idea how much those words would change my life," he murmured. "They changed ours too," Beatrice replied. "You gave us shelter when we needed it most, but you've given us so much more security, happiness, love. And you've given me a family when I thought that part of my life was over," Nathan said. "A second chance I never expected." As they stood together under the stars, Nathan's arms around Beatrice, the ranch peaceful around them, both marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment, a journey that began with a desperate knock on a door during the coldest night of winter and led to the warmest promise of forever. 6 years later, the Morrison Ranch had flourished into one of the most prosperous in the county. The main house, once too large for a single man, now rang with the laughter and footsteps of children, Beatrice's 4 daughters, now young ladies, and 2 additions. 4-year-old Thomas, named for the father the girls had lost, and 2-year-old Elizabeth, honoring the family Nathan had cherished. Charlotte, at 19, had fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher, working at the Benton schoolhouse but returning home each evening. Emma, 16, had developed into an accomplished cook whose pies won ribbons at the county fair. Sarah, 13, worked alongside Nathan with the horses, showing a natural talent for training even the most difficult colts. And Lily, 11 going on 20, charmed everyone with her quick wit and generous heart. On a golden autumn afternoon, Beatrice stood on the porch watching Nathan teach little Thomas to ride his first pony, Elizabeth clapping her hands in delight from her perch on Charlotte's hip. The scene filled Beatrice's heart with contentment. "Penny for your thoughts," said a voice beside her, and Beatrice turned to find Emma offering her a cup of coffee. "Just counting my blessings," Beatrice replied, accepting the steaming mug, "and thinking about how different our lives might have been if we hadn't come to Nathan's door that night." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I remember being so cold and scared, and then suddenly we were warm and safe," she smiled. "It's funny how the worst day of our lives led to all of this happiness." "Life has a way of surprising us," Beatrice echoed Nathan's words from years ago. "Sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of a better one." As if sensing they were talking about him, Nathan looked up from the paddock and caught Beatrice's eye. 6 years of marriage had only deepened the connection between them, a love that had grown from gratitude and admiration to something unshakable and profound. Nathan lifted Thomas onto the saddle in front of him and guided the horse toward the porch. "Look, Mama," the boy called excitedly. "I'm riding like Papa. I see you, my brave boy," Beatrice called back, her heart full. That evening, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Beatrice sat by the fire in the study, as had become their custom. Nathan was looking over accounts while Beatrice mended one of Sarah's riding skirts. "Do you ever think about that night?" Nathan asked suddenly, setting aside his ledger. Beatrice didn't need to ask which night he meant. "Often," she admitted. "Emma and I were just talking about it today." Nathan reached for her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I've never told you this, but that evening before you arrived, I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself, wondering if I'd made a mistake coming west, building this place." His eyes, warm in the firelight, held hers. "I was considering selling the ranch, moving back east." "What changed your mind?" "A knock on my door," Nathan said simply, "and the sight of 5 brave, beautiful souls who needed shelter. Suddenly, this empty house had a purpose." Beatrice set her sewing aside and moved to sit beside him on the sofa. "You saved us, Nathan." "No," he contradicted gently, pulling her close. "We saved each other." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the first hint of winter's approach. But inside the Morrison home, all was warmth and love, a testament to how life's most difficult moments could lead to unexpected joys, and how 2 broken hearts could find wholeness together. Nathan pulled the quilt higher over his sleeping wife's shoulder, thinking of how far they had come from that stormy December night. Each trial had only strengthened their bond, from Thomas's first bout with croup that had terrified them all, to the year drought threatened the ranch, to the joyful chaos of raising 6 children with distinct personalities and needs. What had begun as an act of kindness, opening his door to strangers in need, had transformed into the greatest blessing of his life. Where once stood a lonely man and a desperate widow, now thrived a family united by love that transcended blood ties. As Nathan gazed at Beatrice's peaceful face in the firelight, he remembered the words he'd spoken when she first crossed his threshold. "Welcome home." Neither of them could have imagined then how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how completely they would build a home not just of timber and stone, but of shared dreams, mutual respect, and enduring love. "Thank you," he whispered to his sleeping wife, "for bringing me home too."